Alright, this is the first half of the 7.2 video notes for Algebra 1. So we are going to be multiplying and doing some just basic dividing of polynomials. Multiplying is really our big focus. So to start with, some prerequisite skills are distributing. So you see this 8 right here. It needs distributed. Even though it feels like it's on the wrong side, it's no big deal. You have to do 8 times 6, and so you're going to get 48. And then 8 times 2b, you're going to get 16b. And that's your answer. All right, so like on this one, the -2 is going to get distributed. So -2 times y cubed is -2y cubed. -2 times 6 is -12. And that's our answer there. And then when we distribute the x, we're going to have to use some exponent properties. So remember, when we have x times x squared, it's like x to the 1. Do you remember we add the exponents? So we get x cubed. And then x times 1 is 1x, but typically instead of writing 1x, we're just going to write x. We're trying to get in that habit. All right, so multiplying polynomials and monomials. We won't necessarily do all of these, all right? I've got lots of extra practice here that I'm not sure we need. So we're just going to distribute on this first one the -2x in. So you're going to take -2x times 3x. So first, -2 times 3 is -6. X times x is x squared. So we need to know that x times x is x squared, and we should know that x times x squared is x cubed, and maybe just x squared times x squared, you add the exponents, x to the 4th. Those are some basic ones we need to get really good at. Okay, back to distributing. So then you take -2x times 7. -2 times 7 is -14, and there's an x. That's our answer. Let's jump down here real quick and try B. So this is a monomial, a single term, times a trinomial. It's not a big deal, it just does an extra step. And so you have 3x squared times 5x squared. 3 times 5 is 15. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Now do 3x squared times -2x. 3 times -2 is -6. X squared times x is x cubed. And then 3x squared times 6, 3 times 6 is 18, and then you still have x squared. Okay, let me just show you real quick. We'll just look at D. Another way you can do this, and it does not matter to me, some people use a box to organize their work, and so they put the monomial out here, the 4x squared, and they put 2x squared plus 7x minus 1 up here. And this is just another way to organize your work. You don't have to do it. I'm just showing you. So what this tells you to do is this box tells you to multiply 4x squared times 2x squared. So 4 times 2 is 8. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. This middle box, the left side is 4x squared. Right above it is 7x. So 4x squared times 7x is 28 x cubed. And then this box is 4x squared times right above it is -1, which is -4x squared. So this is just a way to organize your work. We're going to use this method on bigger problems. So if you want to use it on this type of a problem, you can. It's the same exact thing as just distributing by drawing the little arcs. Okay, let's look at dividing. So these specifically say we are dividing, and like we'll have fancier dividing in Algebra 2. This is kind of your basic dividing polynomials. So what you are going to do is, this is a monomial right here, a single term. So when you're dividing by a monomial, write it to where you have x to the 4th over that monomial, 4x cubed over that monomial, and 11x squared over that monomial. So when it's dividing by a monomial, I would divide each individual term by that. So now, this is exponent properties that we learned in chapter 6. X to the 4th over x squared. Remember, you subtract the exponents, you get x squared. Think of this like 4 divided by 1, that's 4. And then x cubed divided by x squared is x. Think of this as 11 divided by 1, that's 11. And x squared over x squared cancels out. So this is our answer. Okay, let's try another one. This is a monomial on the bottom. So when you use this strategy is when you're dividing by a monomial. So you write each of the terms dividing by that monomial. Okay. And 1x cubed if it makes you feel better. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. And then think of this as x to the 5th divided by x cubed. Remember, you subtract the exponents, you're left with x squared. All right, 3 divided by 1 is 3. So x to the 4th over x cubed is just x to the 1, but we're going to call it x. 8 divided by 1 is 8. And then x cubed over x cubed simplifies out. And so that's our answer. Now, that's what you do if it's a monomial, meaning one term. All right, check this one out. This is obviously not a monomial. This has 2 terms on the bottom, so this is a binomial. So when it's a binomial, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the top, okay? So up here, you are going to factor out a GCF. And for right now, since we don't really know what we're doing heavily, I'm going to think of it as undistributing. So look at what the 6 and the 30 have in common, okay? They both have a 6. So you can do what's called factoring. So you can factor out a 6. Basically, you're undoing the distributive property. So if you pull the 6 out, you would have y. And then think about what would need to be here so that when you multiply by 6, you get back to this minus 30. This would need to be minus 5. So just picture distributing it real quick. You don't have to write this out. This is just what I'm picturing in my head. 6 times y is 6y. 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. Okay, so that works. So now over y minus 5. So y minus 5 over y minus 5 can cancel, and you're just left with 6. Okay, let's try this one. So how I know to do this strategy is dividing by a binomial, 2 terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor, which is kind of like undoing the distributive property, out a number they both have in common. The biggest number they have in common is 4. Both 4 divides by 4 and 24 divides by 4. So if you take out a 4, you're left with y minus 6. And how I know that, I think in my head, 4 times y is 4y. And then I think 4 times what would get me minus 24. And I'm like, that has to be a 6. All right, over y minus 6. And so y minus 6 over y minus 6 cancels out, and you're left with 4. Okay, so that dividing was probably the harder thing. Let's multiply. I think multiplying is fairly easy once you get used to it, and really useful. We use it a ton in math. So look at this. We're doing a binomial, 2 terms, times a binomial. So I'm going to heavily encourage you to use the box method because it's going to help us on future things that are more difficult. So the box method, or the area model, you learned back in the day in elementary, is one of the strategies you learn to multiply by. It's just probably not what you use on a regular basis. So because it's a binomial, by a binomial, I make a 2 by 2 box, and I put one of the parentheses out here. So it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to put x plus 2 right over here, x plus 2. And the other one put on top, x plus 5. It does not actually matter which one you do where. Okay, so remember, this whole box method thing is just a way to organize your work. So this box tells you to take x times x, which is x squared. This box on the top right tells you to take x times positive 5, which is positive 5x. This bottom left box here tells you to take 2 times x, which is positive 2x. And then the bottom right box is take 2 times 5, which is positive 10. So now what you have here is you have x squared plus 5x plus 2x plus 10. You can go ahead and combine the 5x and the 2x. They can combine their like terms. They make 7x. And that's our answer. Okay, let's try again. So like I said, the box is a way to organize your work. And even though these are fairly simple problems, it will come in handy in the future. So at least try it so you're familiar with it. That way, when we're like using it to do something more difficult, you kind of know what we're talking about. So it doesn't matter which parentheses goes where. I put x plus 3 on the top, and then I put x, and then put minus 4. Look how I put that minus with the 4. All right, so this top left is x times x, that's x squared. Top right is x times 3, that's 3x. The bottom left corner is negative 4 times x, which is negative 4x. The bottom right corner is negative 4 times 3, which is negative 12. Okay, so I get x squared plus 3x minus 4x minus 12. These two can combine because they're like terms. So we get x squared minus x minus 12 because 3x minus 4x is negative 1x. Okay, go ahead and set up on D. And so on D, go ahead and put 2x plus 1 on top and 3x minus 5 on the left so we're consistent, and pause this video and finish it out, and then I'll come back on and I'll show you the answer. But pause it and see how you can do on your own. So you can see my answer. Watch out for the coefficients. So like I took, let's see here. I took the 3x times the 2x and got 6x squared because 3 times 2 is 6, x times x is x squared. And then watch your signs also, and at the very end, don't forget to combine the negative 10x, the 3x, and that's where the negative 7x came from. You don't have to write this mid-step right here. I just did so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and last but not least, look at this one. This is a binomial, 2 terms, times a trinomial, 3 terms. So use the box to organize it. So instead of a 2 by 2 box, we need a 2 by 3 box, or a 3 by 2. All right, so I have x plus 5, then I have x squared minus 3x minus 2. And like I said, that box just organizes it. Okay, so on this top left corner, you have x times x squared. That makes x cubed. And then I'm going to go straight across this row. X times negative 3x is negative 3x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. 5 times x squared is 5x squared. So then like this box is 5 times negative 3x, which is negative 15x. And then the bottom right corner is 5 times negative 2, which is negative 10. So I have x cubed. Now, these two, let me grab a highlighter right here. These two are both x squared, so they can be combined. And these two are both x's, so they can be combined. So I have the negative 3x squared plus the 5x squared makes 2x squared. So how I got that was I did negative 3x squared plus 5x squared. That's where the 2x squared came from. Now do the blue highlighting. Negative 2x minus 15x, or plus negative 15x. Either way, it's negative 17x and then minus 10. And that's my answer. If you want to try B for the practice, go ahead, pause the video and try it, and I'll come back on with the answer. All right, so you can see my setup here, x minus 3 times all of this. And then here's what I got multiplying each term. You can see the yellow highlights. This is where I combine these two because they're like terms. They're both x squared. And then I combine the blue highlights because they're like terms. They're both x. And here's my final answer.